Bedford says Donald Trump was treated like an embattled incumbent on last night's debate stage, despite not holding office for almost 4 years. Were ABC's David Muir and Lindsay Davis moderators or participants? And at Blaze Media's Julio Rosas will be joining us from Springfield, Ohio, to separate fact from fiction on the migrant crisis in Middle America. We have those stories and so much more. Blaze News Tonight starts right now. Welcome to the Chaos. I'm Jill Savage. Today is Wednesday, September 11th. Last night, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris faced off in their first debate, and we have an all-star cast to unpack what took place last night on stage. So I'm joined by BlazeTV hosts Steve Deace and Liz Wheeler, and Matthew Peterson, the editor-in-chief of Blaze News. And if that's not enough for you, let's go to D.C. and bring in Chris Bedford, senior editor for politics and Washington correspondent for Blaze Media. So, Chris, in your Beltway brief on theblaze.com, you had written that Trump had the chance to seal the election last night and he missed it. So where did he go wrong?
Well, Trump was within the margin of error of Kamala Harris, leading in a lot of the different polls. It's kind of his race to lose when you mix it with the shy people being pulled out there and the anti-incumbent spirit. And he started out strong. Trump, as we talked about last night, is an absolute master debater on this sort of thing. But when he let Kamala Harris, he started to notice it around minute 20. And by the end of the first half hour, maybe it was tied. You started to see him get angry. You started to see him get louder. You started to see him responding. And Kamala Harris obviously did her homework. She was a significantly more practiced debater than we'd seen previously, which surprised me, considering that she'd really only had practice rounds to work with in the last 4 years. She went at him, your dad gave you $400,000. She knows that's not true. Or for whatever it was, $40 million. She knows this number's not true, but she knew she was able to go Donald Trump. She said, people leave your rallies. She knows that's not true. Anyone who's been to these rallies knows that, but she was able to go Donald Trump into that. On subject after subject, she allowed Donald Trump to coaxed him like a matador into making it about himself. Now, granted, it was 3-1. Previously you would hold up as an example of a very bad debate moderator, Candy Crowley, because she fact-checked incorrectly Mitt Romney once. We saw that over and over and over again on this debate. Fact checks that were wrong on Donald Trump. Fact checks that were completely skipped on Kamala Harris. But as opposed to staying on focus and on brand and talking about the broader movement, talking about the things that allowed him to win in 2016, he ended up going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. The Central Park Five, how much money his parents gave him, how big his rallies were. The American people don't care about this sort of thing. They're worried about the economy. They're ashamed about some of the military disasters that have happened under this administration. They're worried about immigration, which he did hammer over and over again. But he got off topic too easily and ended up not being able to seal that deal.
Hi, Chris. Liz here. Question for you. We all obviously are political nerds. We follow this really closely. A lot of our viewers do as well. That's not true of everybody in our country, though. A lot of normies are out there not as engaged as we are. Did this debate make a difference for people who hadn't already decided who they were going to vote for?
I think it potentially could have, but it wasn't major. I mean, it's not a kill blow at all by any means to Donald Trump. This is not something that actually changed narratives, but it did enforce narratives. It enforced some of Donald Trump's worst characteristics, and people's minds weren't following it too closely, that he's kind of rambling, that he's more self-obsessed. There were so many moments when he was accused of putting himself before a country where he didn't even mention, hey, by the way, I took a bullet for this country. He could be at home playing golf, but he didn't. And the lack, I think, of practice shone through. Maybe there was a certain arrogance to Donald Trump on this one. He said, don't worry, I don't need to read the briefing book. I don't need to actually have these duels in the or practice debates, because his lines weren't polished. He was just kind of relying on memory when there were a lot of different facts he could have pulled at any time. My phone was blowing up all night. I'm sure yours was as well, with people who don't work in politics, people who don't do this for a living, who were starting to wonder what the heck is going on here. I think those people left disappointed, but it's still very much a race. There was no memorable moments from Kamala Harris. There was no, I paid for this microphone, Mr. Green. There was no, I don't know what he's saying. I don't think he knows what he's saying. Nothing like that will stand out, but it was a presidential performance from Kamala Harris when the stakes were very high, and an unpresidential performance from Donald Trump.
Chris, I'm curious, within the ranks of our fair elites in Washington, D.C., both Republican and Democrat, what has been the response since? I mean, is there a certain amount of distance at this point from the campaign, or are people, quaking in their boots? Are they excited? What are you hearing?
People aren't quaking in their boots. There's no reason to expect a massive shift in the polls over this. They had just been excited, and they thought they were going to put this ahead of them. Today, I've been getting messages from people who are on the Trump campaign and people who are close to the Trump campaign that seem to be self-aware, saying positive vibes, look at the bright side, look at this. But it's difficult for people to argue with what we saw. I got one message from someone very close to it who said, hey, the Beltway Brief article kind of detailing this. Unfortunately, I agree with all of it. That's the broader feeling. Of course, amongst the liberals, they feel vindicated. There's a lot of Democrat supporters in Washington. It's the vast majority of people. And Kamala Harris, who's been hidden away, who's been really incapable of ever performing like that as she did last night, had one of her better nights. And it actually seems to have made them rather arrogant. The campaign at first just teased it, and then seems to officially offer an actual rematch, another debate. Now, I think that Trump might be crazy to have to go back in with any kind of network moderators. That was the worst moderated debate I've ever seen in my life. But he also does need to take that risk now because he's been shown up and he likes a challenge.
Chris, let's move forward here a little bit. First thing, because not that I needed this after the night we had last night, but the first thing I get in my text this morning is my good friend Congressman Chip Roy telling me it looks like any fight over the CR, SAVE Act, completely not happening. My read of it from people I've talked to is, of course, the majority of the blame, as it should go to the Speaker of the House because he's in charge. But there are also House Freedom Caucus members who had made vows not to vote anymore for any continuing resolutions that don't want to go along with it. So probably 70% Johnson's fault, 30% some members of the House Freedom Caucus. But I bring that up into this conversation, Chris, because at this late stage in a campaign, there are very few things that you can stage that you are in control of to determine the message and the momentum. The debate last night was one, that's gone. This fight would have been another. The former president has been adamant wanting this fight. I know he has pushed, from people I've talked to, has pushed very hard behind the scenes for it. He was pushing for it publicly yesterday. I agree with him on both strategic and political grounds. Otherwise, you're sitting here for the next 55 days, kind of hoping James Comey sends a letter, kind of hoping something happens beyond your control, that you can seize momentum. But you only have so many options in a campaign, Chris, where you're in control of that momentum and constructing it. And it just seems like the Republicans are going to pass on this.
That's exactly right. I compared it this morning to basically missing the football on the kickoff. It's an absolute disaster. There's a lot of different Republicans who have their eyes on the third down when they're not paying attention to the play right now, the first down. There's a couple of reasons. You pointed to one of them. There's a certain dogmatism among some of the conservatives where they say, I'm never going to vote for a CR. Well, unfortunately for them, actual normal budget process where you pass 12 bills and work through it hasn't taken place since, I think, 1996. That's 28 years. The House doesn't even have the memory if it had the will, and it doesn't have the will to actually do this. So if you reject a clean CR with some added things like the SAVE Act, which the president's pushing for, well, then you end up with an omnibus, and these guys end up trying to win, but just guaranteed losing. But I also understand that they're not that trusting right now. Speaker Johnson's staff have been reportedly saying that they're not even that connected to the SAVE Act. This is a classic thing that Republicans do. They start on their own field line. They don't try to kick the ball right at the enemy. Their negotiation tactics. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up so many things here. Their negotiation tactics are awful. You need to come from a position of strength. They've sacrificed that position of strength in this early debate. And there could be some potential to get it back together. Basically, if Donald Trump, who I think is pretty busy, were to really focus on it, he'd peel off the Freedom Caucus. Of course, you got the Speaker of the House. He could peel off the Defense Hawks, but he would need to whip it. The Republican whip has basically been isolated from Republican leadership. Johnson's office doesn't talk to Emmer. There's no inclusion in the bills. These guys, despite having such a slim majority, have basically given up on the days of Tom DeLay or a really hard-working Republican whip and the tactics they're able to use, the honey that they're able to use to get people across the finish line. So right now it looks like Republicans have fumbled two big plays in what is the biggest political week that they have so far kicking off this campaign.
All right, Chris. Well, all we need from you is just to get the Republicans under control in D.C. It's a small task, but I'm sure you're up to it. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow, Chris. We'll come back and talk about the debate moderators because they might have been asleep at the wheel. But Liz and Steve will call out Kamala Harris on some of her biggest lies last night. Up next. Did you know there's nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? There is a massive amount of money that this lame duck administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months. Now, if the president is able to push through these funds, we could see another prolonged inflation surge just like we had during COVID. And I'm sure you all remember the terrible effects that the high prices have had on most Americans, but there is hope, and a surge in prices can be beaten. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group is the ultimate inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by texting the word Jill to 989898. Birch Gold makes it seamless to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax advantage status. So don't wait for the president's spending spree to tank the dollar any further. Protect your financial future now. Text Jill to the number 989898 for your free info kit from Birch Gold. Kamala Harris had no shortage of falsehoods during the debate last night, and a recent article at theblaze.com broke down her top 5. And the first one is the fine people hoax. Kamala Harris repeated the lie that Donald Trump called white supremacists in Charlottesville, Virginia, fine people. Liz, I want to start with you because you wrote out all the lies last night from Kamala Harris. So what was the worst one, in your opinion?
Well, I didn't write them all down because we only had an hour and a half to watch, but I did keep a list of some of the most egregious lies. All politicians lie, right? But the difference that I felt, and I think a lot of us watching felt last night, is she was so brazen about it. She looked us right in the eye without flinching, without blinking, without the usual guilty symptoms that, if I tried to tell a lie to Steve, I'd probably be like nervous and twitching because my body's not used to telling lies. She looked at us, ice water in her veins. She lied about late-term abortion. She lied about the very fine people, Charlottesville hoax. She lied about January 6th. She lied about the bloodbath comment. She lied about crime data in our cities across the country. She lied about her stance on border security. She lied, I believe, 3 times about Project 2025. And she lied about fracking. And yet, not one of those times did the ABC moderators correct her. And I'm not one to complain about a biased stage or moderators that are unfair. It's kind of par for the course. Like, if you're good enough at debating, whatever, biased moderators shouldn't bother you more than maybe like a little bit of an annoyance. But I don't like being a person that complains about that. But they really outdid themselves. I mean, that was propaganda to the level of Pravda, what they were engaging in. And it enabled, the reason I'm bringing it up is not even to complain about it per se, but to explain why Kamala Harris was so brazen. She knew that she could tell those lies without any fear of being not only caught, but even slightly challenged because they are 100,000% in her tank. Awful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious what we think about this because we know that they lie, and we know that they're willing to say anything, and we know that they won't be fact-checking themselves. So given that, we've seen now the facility, that's the new thing that we learned, I think, the facility with which Kamala Harris can do it and get away with it without looking like the borderline brain-dead person that we've seen the clips of for the last few years. And by the way, that was my take on the debate, was simply Trump had ridiculously high expectations in the sense the entire right thought he was going to go out again and have a historic knockdown. And all Kamala had to do, if you're on the right, is not seem retarded, which is what you think of her because you've just seen the clips of her over and over again and you love to hate her, right? So we know that they're going to do this. So my question to you guys is, okay, we've seen the playbook. We know the playbook. So what happens next?
I think we don't need to have moderators for debates. I don't know why the media has to be directly involved at all. We've already eliminated the Presidential Commission on Debates, which is essentially a who's who of swamp creatures as it is. Mm-hmm. I think we ought to just do this as jury selections. Each campaign, just have Americans film videos on their phones. Everybody's got one of these. Okay. You have a question for a presidential candidate. It's got to be less than 90 seconds. All right. Film it, send it, email it here. Each campaign gets all the questions. We're going to have a 90-minute debate, 9 minutes on each question. Okay. And a 2-minute potty break, maybe. Okay. And then each campaign each campaign gets to choose 5 questions, 5 of the videos. And then, there's 9 minutes on each. We have a running clock. And if you guys can't be adults and you just sit there and scream and talk over each other, that'll tell the American people one thing. If you guys can handle it, let people talk. But you get 9 minutes to hash this thing out and answer this person's question. And there's 10 of them, and each campaign chooses 5. And we just rolled the tape. I don't know why we need moderators. I don't know why we need any of this. Yeah. These people are running for the most powerful office in the world. There's no moderators when you're negotiating with Putin and Zelensky. There's no moderators when you're over there with the little dweeb with the bull haircut and his finger on the trigger in Pyongyang. There's no moderators. Nobody's fact checking the conversation with the World Economic Forum or the G8. Okay, it's freaking President of the United States. It's not a Matthew Broderick movie. So just get questions from the American people. They're going to ask better ones anyway. Each campaign gets to choose the 5 they want. You can choose gotcha ones, substantive ones. You can choose a mixture of both. And if the questions aren't fair, that's a you problem. You suck at this like you suck seating a jury. 9 minutes, roll clock, and let's just have a debate. Then it's done.
Liz, I like this because last night, it's not like we got a wide range of questions that people on the right would be concerned to hear about with both of the candidates that are up on stage.
Yeah, you know what else? I like that idea. I would definitely watch that kind of debate that you suggested, but I think it would also be interesting if the candidates asked each other questions. Imagine Trump going up there and asking Kamala about targeting David Daleiden.
You used to let him do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that would be, and good candidates who disagree with the premise of a question will still do that. Mm-hmm. That's what I suggested that Trump do last night, is ask her questions as the answers to his own questions. Mm-hmm. Since we know what he was as president and we need to showcase to the American people what she is trying to hide with her batty demeanor. That is, of course, her radical policies. But I think it would be great if they go up there and say, listen, do you regret leaving up this X post where you asked people to donate to the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which bailed out violent criminals who were torching Minneapolis? Mm-hmm. That would be great if Trump asked her that. And it would be totally fine if she came back and said, do you think that you're fit to run as a convicted felon? Mm-hmm. Because you know that the way that you phrase questions showcases how either smart or not you are. It also is intended to show to the American people your position on an issue and draw out from your opponent their issue. That's actually what I would do moving forward, going back to your point, is what Trump should have done last night. But he can do this moving forward, is just highlight to the American people her radical policies over and over again. Don't get triggered. Don't fall for the bait. Just show that you are on the right side of the issues, because you are.
I think we have a plan. We need to propose. Blaze Media will host a debate for the American people. The American people will ask questions, and then we'll let the candidates ask each
Kamala
other
Harris
questions.
is going to jump all over that.
Come on down to Dallas. We're ready for you. Okay, well, what about this? A lot of people I've heard talking about this today, regular people asking questions about, will they debate again? Should Trump debate again if he gets the chance? Do we have any thoughts about that?
I can't believe that Kamala would give Trump another chance. I think a lot of this is bravado. I think a lot of it is I think they now believe after last night they can bait Trump into almost anything. And I think even this morning he took the bait. Well, I'll do a debate on Fox if it's not Brett Baer or Martha McCallum. The reality is he should have been down. He should be doing at Brett Baer's studio right now, trying to get her back on stage as soon as absolutely possible. So I think that now they see themselves as having leverage here. They can throw things out. They can pester him and come up with conditions that he'll never agree to and say, well, he ducked us because we agreed to debate him already on his terms. Not saying it's right. Okay, I'm just, looking at it from the enemy's perspective. But I mean, that would be a gift from above under any circumstances if they let Donald Trump have another shot at Kamala Harris. We should be thanking Jesus for that, quite literally. I can't believe that they would in the end do that.
Well, I think when you look at Donald Trump, if you're his team right now, all you should be doing for your debate prep is insulting him. Constant insults thrown at him and say, don't take the bait, because that's what got him in trouble last night. But you guys, I want to move on from just what's happening right now with the debates and say what's going to happen as we move forward. There's 55 days left until the election. So what can happen in that amount of time to push this narrative forward, to make red states redder, to try and figure out how to get Donald Trump in office once again?
What I would do if I were Donald Trump, aside from using all of the Kamala clips from the debate to fact check and to highlight her radical policies, is I would do more of what he's been doing by going on those bro podcasts. He went on the All In podcast? He went on Theo Vaughn. He's appealing to young men. And it's interesting because he's doing that almost on the side. It seems that his campaign has this strategy of trying to reach out to suburban women. And I don't think that that's a good idea. Not because suburban women should be discounted, but because they're ideologically on the left. And that's quite a task to undo someone's ideological anchor and then convince them to go vote for someone else. But young men, by and large, especially if you look at surveys the last couple of years, especially, there's been this great increase in young men who are leaning conservative. So they already agree with you. All you have to do then is one task: get them to turn out to vote, because young men actually vote in lower percentages than young women do. And so I would focus my campaign, if I'm Trump, on these people who already agree with you, who just need to be convinced to vote. And I think that that would make a greater difference than kind of stepping out of character, he's trying to be gentle. He's trying to be appeal to people who don't really agree to him, but he's doing it in a way that's actually shifting his own policies versus persuading them that his policies are best for them. And I think that's one of the missteps actually of his campaign strategy, not just of the debate, but I would love to see that from him in the next couple weeks.
I think that's really good. I would say let's have some perspective first. The election is in 55 days. 55 days ago, Joe Biden was still the Democratic nominee for president. 55 days ago, we were just a couple of days from Donald Trump taking a bullet to the face. So I get frustrated when we allow things to just kind of happen to us rather than take initiative. I'm a big believer, as a general rule in life, you solve your problems with aggression. Okay? I mean, I teach my son, you're better off making the wrong move quick than waiting too long to make the right move, because you have time to make up for a mistake. You don't have time for time that you lost and the opportunity is closed. But there is still plenty of time for the organic events that we would need to seize to happen, to occur. And I would expect that a few of them we can't even foresee right now here today will happen. That being said, I'm going to go to a movie that was very popular in Matt and I's generation when we were young men, all right? And it had a tagline, okay? ABC, always be closing, right? The Trump campaign needs to be ABI, okay? Always be issues. Everything's about issues, all right? We're not chasing any more damn rabbit trails. We're not going down any more, is she Indian? Is she black? Okay, which does she read the King James or the ESV? We're not doing any more of that, okay? ABI, always be about issues. The treasure trove of content that she presented in this debate on the issues is bountiful. I mean, the challenge I would have if I were involved in Trump's campaign messaging is picking ones the targets are so abundant that the temptation would be to hit them all, and therefore you cancel yourself out. So what are the 2 or 3 greatest hits that I'm going to hammer home over and over again? Because away from all the flash and sizzle reel and the moderator and everything else, when you boil it all down, Kamala Harris showed no regard for the suffering of the American people last night. She showed no remorse or self-awareness about the role her administration has played in it, and showed she had no plan to do anything about it. And that's, if I'm on the Trump campaign, that is my big takeaway. And I'm hammering that, and I'm using clips from this debate of her speaking in that regard the next 55 days.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the aggressiveness has to be there, and they have to be facile, and they have to move quick. So it's a very DC thing to look at numbers, and a bunch of political nerds sit there and like, we will wave a little IVF flag, and then we'll get this demographic that now hates us to move over. That's ridiculous thinking. Who is actually on your side? Take the wave of support on your side and direct that towards the rest of the American people and invite them in. So some examples of this would be, and you're not going to get your own media. You have to make your own media. So make your own story. So examples of this would be Springfield. I mean, I would go there. I'd go to Ohio. I'd go to numerous places in Ohio, talk to people who are in support. Even Mike DeWine right now is going to call out the National Guard, noted MAGA extremist. And so you go out there, you know you have them on the run. You go exactly what Steve said. You aggressively go right to that point. You look in the camera, and then you put out your own media. Blaze Media would be there. We'll be there. Everyone else will be there, and we'll just project out. And they could do that on every issue. Go somewhere, talk to a family. You want to do fracking? Go to a place that's been influenced negatively by fracking, let regular people talk about it, and then dare the rest of the conservative media to follow you and push the message out on some of these major issues. And what I hate about where we're at now is we don't have the time to play the DC games about, if we just change this policy, or we have this little doodad, or this is go time. Everyone knows it's serious. Go to the serious issues and push them out.
I look at it as a failure, though, because we're not sitting around here talking about how great Donald Trump was on immigration, on just the economy, the big issues that, honestly, this should have been one of the easier debates. With as bad as things are in the country right now, just pointing it out every single time that she would say something, just say, okay, you're the current vice president right now. How is this not the lasting message that we walked away from in that debate last night?
Okay, but I think that's right. In the debate, though, I mean, this is I think what we're saying is go outside the debate. I mean, take the debate to. So you want to talk about Kamala Harris or problems? Have a press conferences from California. Go to San Francisco with a backdrop behind you of people in the streets and say, this is what she did. This is the result of her policy. Right. And get outside of the fact checkers that way.
But you're going to have to be very detailed. So, for example, the moment last night when Springfield came up, okay, he should have already called the woman when he saw the clip, should have picked up the phone, picked up his cell phone, said, hey, this is Donald Trump. Call the city manager yourself. Who was it? Call the city council. I want to talk to that woman. I want her name. I want her story. I want to hear what she has to say. I'm citing her at the debate. I can't just go in there and wing it. And I can't say, well, Laura Ingraham said this with that. You can't do that. Okay. And the thing that I'm the most frustrated by, going back to, the panic over COVID and handing the presidency to Fauci and everything we've seen at times in this campaign, is if there's one person in America that should understand that the left has turned this into a zero-sum game. They've tried to put him in prison. They've tried to take his family fortune away from him. Okay. They impeached him. They did a 3-year coup against his presidency. And then they dropped another coup called a scamdemic on him and executed another one. And yet for some odd reason, he still doesn't, in terms of the way he prepares for battle with them, does not treat it like a zero-sum game. Like he can just kind of just walk in, wing it, and not have stuff on lockdown. Right. And I understand from a personality standpoint, Matt, he's way more Patton than Eisenhower. All right. I get it that he's the general that leads the tank division, doesn't sit in the control room with the nerds like us. I understand that. Okay. But the idea that Patton just hopped in a tank and said, hey, guys, let's go take North Africa. They had plans. I mean, and they had ideas. They had execution. They had strategies. And what you saw last night was a guy just kind of winging it up against a coordinated strategy. And you saw in the end, no matter how extraordinarily talented he is, no matter how much guile he has, which is maybe his greatest gift, that he just refuses to be sunk by things that most men would just walk away from, all right? He could not overcome the coordinated hit job that was being done on him. And I think he clearly did not listen to his advisors. He clearly did not listen to the debate prep team. And that is not, we need him to win. That's not going to cut it for the next 55 days. You're not a cuck to have a plan. Okay? They need to have a freaking plan. He needs to listen to it. He's not a child. Quit blaming the advisors. He needs to listen to it and then go out and execute it.
It'd be so much easier if they all just listened to us here in this room. Steve, thanks so much for joining us here today on the show. When we come back, were the debate moderators lying when they said all the pets are safe in Springfield? Julio Rosas will join us from Ohio and give us the facts. Don't go anywhere. You don't have to wait until November to vote. You can vote every day with your dollar at goodranchers.com. You can make a powerful choice for the American meat, support American agriculture, and make your voice heard for transparency in our food. Good Ranchers sources all of their meat exclusively from American farms, which not only supports local ranchers, but also ensures that you receive high-quality American-raised meat with no antibiotics, no added hormones or seed oils ever in their food. So by shopping from goodranchers.com, you're making a statement about the kind of values that you stand for, values of quality and hard work and dedication to American tradition. And right now, Good Ranchers is having a presidential promo. So for a limited time, you can get a free add-on for a whole 4 years, which is good until the next election. And that means when you subscribe to any of their boxes, you get to decide if you want extra plain chicken breast or Angus ground beef, the smoked bacon, or wild-caught salmon in your order for every 4 years. It's the perfect way to ensure always high-quality American meat in your kitchen. Every cut is pre-trimmed, individually packed, and vacuum sealed, which makes your life easier. It's no more messy meal prep and no more wasted food because of freezer burn or poor storage packaging. So Good Ranchers helps you get the most flavor and the most value out of every ounce of meat that you buy. And in this economy, that matters more and more each day. So don't miss out. Use my code Jill to claim this presidential promo worth over $1,200 and claim $25 off your first box plus free shipping at goodranchers.com. And that is going to be good American meat for your family until 2028. Use the code Jill, goodranchers.com. American meat delivered.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Donald Trump said it. Springfield, Ohio is dealing with a massive influx of migrants from Haiti, and some of the residents do claim that the Haitians are eating their pets, the cats, the dogs, the ducks from the local park. But police have said that they haven't received any of these reported incidents. So before we get to what's happening on the ground, let's lay out how we've gotten here. Matthew, I want you to walk us through how we've got all these cat memes and why Donald Trump is even mentioning this on the debate stage last night.
Well, it's an instructive study in how media works these days, and it's more than amusing. I think it makes a serious point, and it's part of really warfare in the media. So all this starts with a story that's been developing for years in Springfield, Ohio, where we have at least one incident where a child was killed in a car accident by a Haitian who couldn't drive. I don't think had a driver's license, and there's many such cases there. So this is a serious story. It's a serious story that's been developing for years. But what happened recently was someone noticed on the Twitters, on X, that city residents were actually complaining at city council meetings about pets and animals being taken from this park. And then someone found a video of a woman who was in Ohio, somewhere else in Ohio, who may or may not have been a Haitian immigrant, body cam footage of police coming up to her and her apparently eating a cat. Whether that was related or not, right, this is all thrown into the mix of the internet. And all of a sudden, people started to get on Grok, which is X's AI, and you can easily make images there. If you haven't tried that before, it's great fun. And the memes started immediately coming from the people of Donald and his wife saving the cats and various pets. This is one from Peachy Keenan, our friend who's been on the show, saving them, bringing them to safety from the migrants. This ended up on the Drudge Report, trying to say that the campaign was over for Trump. And it also, I believe, was retweeted by the president, if not his son. So within the period of a couple days, you had people basically saying, look, the pets need to be saved. And of course, the mainstream media, very important to note, said, and some on the right said, don't do this, fact check this. We don't actually know if a cat was eaten by anyone. And I think the smarter play was people who said, we know people are complaining about something like this happening. We're going to use the memes to draw attention to it. And what's behind the curtain? Well, that's all the really bad stuff that Julio is here to tell us about.
Absolutely. Let's bring in Julio Rosas, a Blaze Media national correspondent who's in Springfield, Ohio. And Julio, take us what you've seen now on the ground, and what have some of the residents actually told you?
So one of the biggest issues outside of this whole, pet and duck park issue is just the lack of housing. What's been happening is because landlords have not renewed their leases with, let's say, a family of 4 that are American citizens, and so they give them the notice, say, we're not going to renew the lease. They then bring in, I've heard numbers of 10, 15, even 20 Haitians into a 2-3 bedroom house or apartment, and they're either charging per room or they're charging per bed. I've heard that they're charging $200 for a bed per week to these Haitians. And the reason why the landlords have been able to get away with it is because the city is not enforcing its building codes. It's not enforcing the occupancy codes because that is a fire hazard. You can't have that many people in a house or an apartment like that. It's just not safe for many reasons. And so there have been American citizens who have been displaced. You can even say they've been replaced from their homes, and that's why a lot of American citizens have left Springfield. Not only that, because also safety concerns, or they've ended up homeless. Because when we're talking about homeless and the problem of homelessness in the rest of the country, usually there's drugs involved or there's mental illness involved, but in some cases here in Springfield, it's just simply because they don't have the means to move somewhere else in a 4 different place. So there actually has been encampments, and I reported that today at theblaze.com of some of these encampments that have sprung up around Springfield.
Well, I know that there is an elderly woman that was explaining, like, she doesn't even feel safe anymore right now, leaving her house without some kind of weapon on her. I think we could have that clip. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
I am a disabled elderly woman that has such high anxiety leaving my house that I rarely do. And when I do, I'm armed, and I have my 120-pound pit bull with me. I've been followed. I've been groped. I'm 58 years old.
Right, like these are just widespread issues. It seems like with so many people coming into this town, how do you explain that people are just being told, like, some of this isn't happening to them, and you know what, just make this all go away, right? The news media, the national media is trying to make this out not to be a problem, but you're hearing other things there, Julio, on the ground.
Yeah, and that's been kind of the frustrating thing about it, is because you have a lot of citizens. I mean, the whole reason why the whole cats and ducks at Snyder Park became an issue, it wasn't because of the local media reporting on it. It was because people on Facebook had been raising the alarm about that issue for a while, and just happened to be that post was the one that got thrown into the stratosphere. But there are a host of other issues, and the other one that I found is, as Matt mentioned earlier, when it came to driving. I went to Tremont City, which is a very, very, very small village that has 350 people. It's right on the outskirts of Springfield, and they don't even drive to Springfield to go grocery shopping or clothes shopping. They travel further north to other towns where there's not any Haitians because they don't even feel safe driving on the roads, and they're not harassed by the Haitians like they had been in Springfield. So there's a multitude of issues that is being compounded all at once. It has been building for a while, but it really has reached kind of a boiling point, especially in the aftermath of them being kind of thrown into the national spotlight this week. And so I know people have been kind of posting about how, oh, well, it's great that their jobs are being fulfilled. It's like, well, but it's coming at a cost of American citizens. That's been the issue for some time. And so just because, the city manager might say they haven't heard the reports, I've kind of heard differently. I'm working on that right now. But there are other issues, and citizens here have said that they feel like the city commission is not listening to them, and they're just trying to push everything under the rug. And that's why there's a petition that's being drafted right now to remove the entire city commission, because people are so fed up about this.
Julio, when you went to the city council Tuesday night, and just so everyone knows, we sent Julio, instead of going to the debate, outside the debate, where there was some kind of minor protest scheduled, he ended up going right to Springfield and getting on the ground there and checking this out for us. So tell us a little bit about the city council meeting. It was interesting what you said on Twitter. You should follow Julio on Twitter if you don't already. You said that probably most people were still accepting. They were like, I don't have a choice. I can't do anything about this. And this is just something we have to deal with. Well, others were angry. And can you tell us, just describe the sentiment? I mean, the people who are angry, are they getting really upset? You said boiling point. And what are the other people saying?
So the people that were generally supportive of the Haitians being there, it was kind of a combination of, well, we can't be racist. We have Trump mentioning us and slandering us. So, that's not good. And basically, they've just said they're here and they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. So we have to deal with it. The other half was upset, but they weren't shouting or being confrontational like that woman earlier. I mean, she was directly saying, and she actually said afterwards, she said that she was scared, not just for herself, but for all the women in Springfield because of what she and other people have gone through. And so it was a peaceful, it was a very, calm, cool, collected city hall meeting given the circumstances. But that doesn't take away the anger that people are feeling about even just the basic tenets of what we know to be a civilized society, right? But there's a lot of things that have kind of gone to the wayside because it just seems like for the leadership in Springfield is more focused on accommodating the Haitians first and then the American citizens second.
Julio, this is, no mainstream media is sending anyone to Springfield this week, but you are there, I know, with some other friends in right-leaning press. And I wish you the best in securing the bounty that our friend Chris Rufo has put out for anyone who gets the goods on the animal story.
If anybody can do it, Julio can.
I certainly hope so. I want that $5,000.
Absolutely. All right, Julio, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
We'll wrap up the political implications of the debate so you can move on with your life coming up. There's only 55 days left until the election, and early voting starts as soon as next week. So, Liz, as we wrap up the show today, I want to know what effects you think that the debate had on the election.
I think in a certain sense, it remains to be seen. Because if you think about the last 6 weeks, when Steve was talking about this earlier in the show, if you think about the last 6 weeks, everything that we have seen politically, Joe Biden getting deposed as incumbent, Kamala getting installed, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, none of those things we could have foreseen. If you would ask us about that, say in June, nobody would have guessed that. And yet those things happened, obviously, like earth-shattering political things. I don't think it's just going to be this like benign vanilla ride until election day. Some things are going to happen. So depending on what they are, I hate to not be able to make a good prediction, but if they're significant, then this debate isn't going to make a difference. But that remains to be seen. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I mean, we have to keep in mind that this whole thing has been going back and forth, and we can't all be sitting there. You have to be calm, when you watch this out there. Otherwise, we're all going to go nuts.
While we watch it, or like after we watch it? Because while you're watching it, it's not very
embrace
exciting.
the chaos, right? I mean, we know the chaos is there, and so we have to be a little bit removed and realize every day something crazy is going to happen, and it's going to make everyone go, "Oh, it's so over," or "Oh, we're so back," and that's just how it goes. And look, independents are still out for grabs, and Kamala was tanking before this happened.
She was on a downward. I think that's another reason I was a little disappointed, is because it was just prime for Trump to take that debate. But the more Kamala talks, and I know there are going to be some on the left said she did talk for an hour and a half and she did great. Okay, but she wasn't asked any tough questions. She didn't talk about anything of substance, no policies, nothing. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with immigration. Like, God forbid another migrant crime wave happens. God forbid another migrant caravan crosses the border. God forbid some of these terrorists who have crossed do something illegal to harm people. We don't know what's going to happen in Ukraine. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, inflation, they're bragging about inflation, by the way, because they're like, oh, the rate of the increase of inflation has slowed compared to what it was last month. And they're acting like we should be like, oh, thank you.
It's only 2.5%. It's a year-over-year number, you guys. Yes. It's still built upon all of the other inflation that we already have.
Exactly. So it could make a difference with some people. I think that what they're trying to do, their biggest strategy, is to legitimize Kamala Harris to the point that they can cheat her into office. And I say that because that's what they did in 2020. Republicans have done next to nothing to correct that problem for 2024. So Democrats are emboldened to do that again. But the reason that they pushed Joe Biden into the nursing home, it's weird that he's actually still president of our country, isn't it? Yeah. The reason they pushed him aside is because they didn't think that they could cheat, because it just wasn't realistic that he could win. So they wanted to install someone who they could realistically claim won, even if they cheated. And Kamala Harris did scooch herself a little bit closer to that margin of cheating. But there's still a lot of days until the election, even though election season starts next week. And a lot of stuff is going to happen between now and then.
One of the things that was unknown that we all kind of thought would happen would be Taylor Swift coming out and endorsing Kamala Harris. And that happened last night on Instagram. And Liz was talking about it in the post-debate show. But I think this is as tame of an endorsement as we could have possibly asked for from Taylor Swift. She said, go out there, do your own homework, register to vote, but I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris. And I thought it could have been so much worse, Liz.
I mean, I thought it was really weird that she endorsed Kamala Harris essentially on a debate night, when Kamala Harris, according to the left, would have been like the winner. Like, why would she need a double whammy? They actually like wasted it in a sense.
That's what I
would do if I were Kamala and Taylor reached out to me about this, I'd be like, wait until I'm like down a little bit. Wait until Trump has some kind of win or some momentum, and then you roll that up. Very weird. And I pointed this out last night. If you read the entire caption, much too long for an Instagram caption, by the way. If you read her entire caption explaining why she's voting, it's actually about her. She goes, recently I was made aware that an AI of me falsely endorsing Donald Trump's presidential run was posted on this site. So the reason she's sharing how she's voting is because of herself. It's not because of Kamala. It's because of herself and her own image. And then the three reasons she gives are because of LGBTQ plus rights, IVF, and a woman's right to her own body. So,
Peterson, your Tay thoughts?
I just go with what you say, Jill, on this one.
Thank you.
I do think that the timing is very suspect. It's under the cover of a win, as Liz is saying, that would be overshadowed. So it wouldn't take someone too savvy with social media to know this was a good way to almost pro forma say, oh yes, I support Kamala, and I have to because of what Trump said. And by the way, everyone will almost forget about it, and it's not the big news of the day. It's just mixed in with everything else. So
interesting.
That is an interesting
I think it's probably a bigger deal, though, that she endorsed Kamala than the debate itself was. Like, she's gonna have a bigger impact on the number of votes that are cast for Kamala Harris than that debate.
And let me encourage anyone who doesn't take this seriously because we're above this, that we're not above this as a culture. This is something that would have a huge debate. We live in an idiocracy, and
how many followers
that's the way it is.
283 million followers on Instagram alone. Like, this is not something to dismiss by any means. Republicans dismissing this kind of stuff is one of the reasons we're in this position right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if you look at Steve Deace, he brought in the Tay numbers where there were 306,000 people that clicked on her register to vote link. A lot of people could just be looking at what does this actually take you to, but the impact is there nonetheless. Be sure to subscribe to Blaze News Tonight on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to rate and review the show. It helps everybody else to go find it. We'll be back with more tomorrow night.